Hello, everyone, and welcome. And wherever you're coming from and whatever time of day it is, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. For those that are here live, or those of you that are watching the recording, as you're getting settled in, I'll just let you know that I'm Katherine Gray, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Tempo, and I'm going to be the host today. Okay, and so while everyone is getting settled, we will just start a poll question. So we just want to get a temperature on how you are all feeling going into this new year and how confident you are about your teams in the face of change. So if you found out tomorrow that there was going to be some big impactful change coming your way and all the plans that you have baked or partially baked, everything that you've been working on in the last quarter had to be massively revised, how confident are you that your team would know how to respond? So while you guys are all filling that out, I'll start to set up this discussion. We at Tempo, everyone here on this panel is here from Tempo. We just got back from a week-long offsite where we spent several days talking about all of the trends that we see in our customer teams, in the conversations with our partners, specifically around the pressures and how people respond to pressures that impact everything from how leaders keep their teams aligned and focus on the most important work in the business. And it's not easy. It's not easy for us. Like, we work at it too. And we see everyone out there trying to figure out what are the best practices today, since there's so much change coming at us all the time. Yeah. So let's set up this agenda here today. First, we're going to talk about some of those big shifts that we see. And I'll give you a hint. It's both the tech that's impacting teams and the processes, like AI. As well as the tools that people are reinvesting in, questioning, trying to see, are they using the right processes and the tools given everything that's going on right now. And then we'll talk about the three trends that we see impacting the management of portfolios at the strategic level. And we'll talk specifically about how PMOs and the teams that they support can take some of these new perspectives into the new year. Okay, and so I'm going to set up our speakers now. We've got today Patty Land, who is the head of product operations at Tempo, Lauren Smith, who VP of PMO, EA, and IT, or lovingly referred to as VP of acronyms. And she's one of our newest additions at Tempo, and this is her first webinar with us. Welcome, Lauren. And Rekha Raghu, who is the VP of product at Tempo, and probably a familiar face to many of you.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's dive in. So one of the changes that I've seen in my time in this space, which is now over a decade, is that we've gone from being pretty satisfied with the question, going into a meeting and just being able to tell people, are we going to deliver on time? That's usually, we've all agreed what we're going to do, and now is it going to happen when we said it would? And that's usually what people have been most nervous about. But so if you could show up to a meeting or respond to an email with an answer to that question, that was enough. But we all know that's no longer true. And leaders are taking what's sometimes referred to as a more lean approach, even if they aren't calling it that, whereby they want some feedback early and often about the strategic relevance of the work that teams are delivering. And is the technology that's coming at them either the technology that's disrupting the teams or and the markets, or the tech that supports them? This is more critical than ever. Mm-hmm. So this crew we've assembled these people because they've got a unique take on all of these issues, considering all the roles in your day jobs. Okay, so let's go into the first trend. So what we've seen is the end of static planning. We pretty much know that that's no longer good enough. And now we have to have the type of planning processes that allow teams to respond quickly to any change that comes their way. So Lauren, I know you have thoughts on this. So what changes do you think that leaders need to be able to communicate to their teams? And what is the role in the PMO? How have you seen this change to static reporting?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said more often. I think that's really changed in data-driven conversations and data-driven decisions. So I think leaders are expecting weekly updates. They're expecting, monthly steer codes. They're expecting live reports. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a meeting or even not in a meeting or just at your desk, and that someone's an executive slacks you and asks you a question about how something's going and asking for numbers or data points because they're in an ELT meeting and the CEO is asking them a question. You have to be ready to provide that, and it has to be accurate. And it is no longer waiting for that time that maybe was once a quarter or even once a month. It is definitely real time. And at my level as the head of PMO, I'm not in the day to day. So I really rely on the process being thorough, that the technology is accurate. So I can go into it and say, here you go, chief product manager, this is the data. And I feel confident because my team entered it correctly. Without having to go to a bunch of people. So I've seen that is one of the biggest shifts I've seen over the last time.
So the way I'm thinking about it is you're kind of like, if there's like a pyramid, and I don't mean like in a people hierarchy place, but just in terms of the data. So like the teams that are executing the work, there's like data capture there. And then what you're saying is that you rely on all of that to be accurate. So when you get up to the top level of reporting, you can respond to an executive and know with confidence that the information that you're giving them is accurate, up to date, and they know how to respond to that and how to make decisions. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So Patty, being the person that focuses more on the teams, like what do teams need to do to adjust? Like apart from the tech and the reporting and all of that, like how does that impact them?
There's a lot. I mean, we just coming out of annual planning. I'm sure a lot of us in this call are just kind of coming out of annual planning and have a lot of emotions around that statement, the end of static annual planning. Annual planning still exists, of course, but it becomes something that becomes iterative and living, and you adjust and adapt as the year goes on. It's really important to have stable goals. So even though the plan adjusts, you know why you're doing what you're doing. Building a culture around continuous realignment around stable goals is really, really important for your teams because it creates an environment of psychological safety for them. We know our North Star. We're expecting to pivot and adapt throughout the year, so we're not surprised by it. And we trust each other to act in alignment with our goals when the plan needs to change. And anybody who's worked in portfolio management has spent so much time and energy in status reporting, like we were talking about. And so we know we're going to need to do status reporting. But if our culture associates plan change with failure, and it's rewarding green status reports over honest ones, then our tools are just helping us lie faster. So we have to be able to give honest status reports that are grounded in data. We have to expect to be able to pivot in order to respond to them. And so plan change is not a failure. It's an expected response and adaptation in alignment with our stable goals.
Okay, got it. So it sounds like, what you're saying is, knowing that, someone in Lauren's position is going to have to answer to executives, and knowing that she's going to rely on like really accurate information. We have to give teams like the space and like you said, the psychological safety in order to like be able to speak up, say everything's going great or it's not, like, and we need some guidance here. Okay. And so Rekha, then it all comes back to you.
No,
no pressure. So, obviously like having good agreements, like Patty was talking about amongst teams about how we're going to work and how we're going to work together. But, then the tooling comes in and that has to be in harmony with the agreements that the people have made. So like, how do you see tooling impacting all of these issues?
It's a great point. And Patty and I were just talking about this yesterday, really, right? Like, so this is pretty fresh in our minds. We're coming into the year trying to kind of make sure, like, the plan that we kicked off our PIs and how do we keep updated? Next plans changes, right? Like change, like to Patty, your point, changes is not a failure, right? Like from technology side, right? As part of this whole shift in from shifting away from static planning, right? Like the biggest shift, I think, what I see is roles the systems play, right, in decision making. Prior to this, planning tools, right, like Patty, as you mentioned, exist to document decisions. However, now it needs to be agile and to be able to support decisions as they are happening, right? Static plans really worked when change was very slow. You could afford to have these long annual planning reviews and manual reconciliation. With constant shift in priorities, because the environment is, right? So I think that's where I think the system really needs to be adaptable to, right? So when tools are really built to just take a look at like snapshots or point-in-time reports, even pivots feels disruptive. I mean, we do this all the time, right? We want plan to adapt, right? Teams then get choked. They stop, they rebuild plans. Sometimes they soften the reality just to avoid the cost of changing course. All right. So what I think the trend really is going here is really that from tools perspective, the tools becomes a living system, right? That continuously connects planning and strategy and execution and constraints. So when plans change, you're not really rebuilding the plan, right? You're just adjusting it. Sorry, my priority, right? Like that really matters to me, at least at the leadership level, right? Like all of us, right? When we are not, even though we're not in the day-to-day thing, right? Like I rely on the process being solid, technology being accurate, so that I should be able to walk into a conversation, right? Here is the data and trust that it is going to reflect the reality without chasing people for validation, right? That's how I look at it. So but when when technology supports that, then the plan really stops feeling like something went wrong, right? It becomes a normal signal, right? That's kind of where I think about it really, right? So good systems really should make the change manageable.
Right. Yeah. And I realized that as I set this up, as I did it in like probably the most dramatic way, like massive change is coming your way. And probably what's more likely is there's like a bunch of little changes that have to be tracked. And so like what you're saying is like, that's the living system whereby, you know, we want to respond to the tiny changes. Well, like we tested this and now we're going to go in this direction. It's not a massive change, but it needs to be accounted for. Like, you know, we might need, you know, a new person on this team that understands this particular thing that we think is going to be a better fit for our customers, for example. So that's a really good point.
Rekha pointed out something really important, that is the tools are important for giving us trust in the data, and that's everything. The trust in the data is the key piece.
Right.
Yeah, I like to say data or it didn't happen, right? Like I say that with my teams a lot. I think that, I think we're going to get into it later, but I feel like you get a lot of confusion when there's either no data or too much data that isn't filtered correctly. So having a tool that can take, Kat, what you said, that foundation of data input and aggregate it up accurately and live, I mean, you're just bound to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I think, Lauren, you were talking at the beginning of it, right? Trust to me is critical, right? At the end of the day, especially when leaders, when we are not in the day-to-day, right? Like I want to be able to have that trust, right? Like, so where when data becomes trustworthy, something really important happens in my mind. Like leadership stop questioning the data, right? And they start focusing on the decision, right? That's when planning changes, adaptable, stops feeling like a failure, right? Like, and then starts to feel more like a responsible leadership. Right. And trust. Without trust, everything slows down, right? So that's kind of really, yeah.
We could do a whole hour on trust.
A whole hour.
Data is just as hard to trust as not enough, to your point, Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to our next trend, silos. These are always a big risk. And I think that we all know that silos can be really problematic. They don't just slow teams down. They have a tendency to hide risk. So while it's good to stay in your lane, you want to make sure that the partners that are in the next lane over, that they have what they need so that you can all get to that finish line together. So Patty, from a people perspective, how do you see teams maintaining relationships so that they can work together effectively?
People are always the problem, aren't they? We're always the wrench in the engine. No matter the tools, no matter the process, no matter the plans that we put into place, people are the variable. And the biggest risk in a plan isn't missed deadlines. It's miscommunication between people that don't know that they're dependent on each other. And so exposing those dependencies is really important. Portfolio management is really about relationship management. There's a psychological concept called Dunbar's number that says that humans are cognitively limited to maintaining about 150 stable social relationships at a time. And it sounds like a lot, but it's really not very many. In a global PMO, a portfolio manager might have 500 stakeholders. They might have a dozen project leads. They have a handful of sponsors that don't agree with each other about anything. And you're cognitively bankrupt before you even start to manage the plan. And so it's natural that we create these silos to try to manage those relationships and understand where the dependencies exist in a manageable way. And that's really what the tools have the power to help us do better than we can as people, particularly with AI capabilities that have come around in recent years. There's such power to be able to manage those relationships. And so we've spent the last, decade mostly focusing on using our tools to manage tasks. And the shift this year is really moving toward managing complexity, where the tools don't replace relationships, but they help to filter the noise so that the PMO can focus on, of those 500 relationships, the 5 that really matter today to unblock the work.
Got it. So it's not just the numbers, it's the complexity in that web of people. And that's what you have to manage through in order to make sure that everyone is communicating properly. Okay. So Lauren, and I know one of the risks that you sometimes run into is being the process police. I certainly appreciate process, but I, have also had moments where I bristled under it. I think we've all been there, and it can sometimes be perceived as a blocker, especially if you're trying to be agile. I've certainly heard that before. So how do you ensure that people feel both respected in terms of their philosophies and how they want to work, and in the end, just to make them feel successful?
Yeah, I like to tell my project managers that you're not a subject matter expert of the work that they're doing. In 30 days, you probably should know what they're doing, but you're not going into it. You're the subject matter expert of the process, of organization, providing visibility, data, those types of things. So to take that off of the team and still assure the processes are being followed is kind of key of what I see as successful. I go back to data every time, right? If our expectation is for our subject matter experts, the project team, to be entering whatever we're asking in the tool, the data should help. And then project management office can help enforce those processes that way to take it off. So you definitely get we don't want to overburden the people. A lot of the projects are on top of their day job. So good project managers understand that, and they know that, and they work around it. I also say that we're a supporting function, right? That is at the heart of it. We're an extension of the sometimes most expensive talent in the organization, sometimes the busiest talent in the organization. So just remembering that and knowing that you are a supporting role can help you be less of a pencil pushing project manager, like I say, some people, and more or a process pushing project manager and more of a helpful hand. I look at it.
Very well said. I mean, kind of thinking about this too, right? Patty, the statement about your relationship kind of resonated with me. I'm a people person in general. I love to connect to people, but of course, as you get older, you get exhausted. I think in work and outside of work, right? Social side of things is exhausting, even though I'm an extrovert, right? I think it's really what you touched on though, right? From technology side, I sort of feel that it's not like people don't want to collaborate, right? Like you said, it's the number of relationship you can maintain. Similarly, on the portfolio side, right? Dependencies stops being obvious, right? They probably as you scale, there is going to be spread across teams and shared capacity, overlapping initiatives, right? Timing constraints that no one can really see end to end, right? So I think this is where I think you touched on it briefly. The modern systems or AI can really add value, right? But continuously, AI can help by scanning for these hidden connections. You may not know the dependencies, like a growth team doing something that has a dependency on a tool that is being deprecated by a different team, right? So it's oftentimes that hidden connections. Maybe that's where it can help to identify and make them visible, right? Like and highlight these downstream impact that is not necessarily visible in a static plan, right? So AI is really good at filtering signal from noise, right? It can actually highlight what relationship matters and where are the risks emerging, right? So I think from tech perspective, I'm going to say the goal isn't necessarily to eliminate silos. It really make those connections visible so that the risks don't stay hidden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's how we work naturally as people, isn't it?
Right.
Like we want to form groups, we want to still maintain those relationships, but when you go through your day, you can't attend to everything. You have to attend to the things that are most relevant to you and the things that you need to know in order to act on them. And it's helping to be able to do that in a very human way.
I think to add on to that too, you don't know the job of your peer, right? You know your job. You don't know. Sometimes it's not a fault of anybody's because you know what you're responsible for. You don't know what your peer is responsible for. So the expectation that you even know that you're being a blocker or have dependency on someone else could just be lack of awareness or lack of knowledge, but not in a negative way. And I think that is, again, where tools, but also the PMO steps in to look at it holistically and identify it. And again, I go back to people have a day job, projects live on top of their day job in some companies. So it's hard to get that saying, you can't see the forest from the trees, right? You know, that's that saying. And the PMO they have the capacity to do that with the tools, with the data.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing an undercurrent of that sentiment again of trust. Like, you know what you're doing. You trust your teammates to know what they're doing, and you just have to share information so that everyone can go forward. I think that's a nice segue into our third trend, which is, you know, we used to track work again to give those status reports, but now we need to enable flow. And, you know, flow can mean a lot of things. And I think that the definition that we're using here now is that, you know, people can go forward with a lot of confidence, with the information they need, with that trust that their teammates are going forward as well. And they're all going towards the same North Star. So, you know, just, you know, looking at, you know, how data in the teams supports that, Rekha, what kind of information and what kind of like long-term outlook supports that strategic decision making, and how do you design the systems that enable that flow without turning the PMO into bottlenecks?
Great question, right? I think the key difference between tracking work versus actually enabling flow is sort of the information I think people are looking for, right? When you look at tracking, I'm sure Lauren will align with me, right? Like tracking really focuses on what has already happened, statuses or percentage complete, delivery dates. Whereas like you're talking about the kind of long-term outlook flow, really more focus on signals, indicators of what could happen next, right? Like for me, from tools perspective, the most important data really, again, back to my previous discussion, really is not status, it's really the leading indicators, right? Like when things like a capacity is tightening, that is the dependency is stacking up, right? Is work drifting away from the strategic priorities or initiatives? Or are there some small delays that over time it's going to compound to a bigger thing, right? That's the outlook. That's what I think we need to have from systems perspective, right? Like today, a lot of these systems are not connected, right? So our vision really is to connect strategy and outcomes, right? And then identify the work that is in progress, the people and the capacity, and really the dependencies, right? Again, I'll go back to the AI piece again. Like this is where I think I'm super excited about AI. That's why, right? This is where AI becomes really valuable. Humans are not great at scanning weak signals across large portfolios, right? Like they just cannot. I mean, there's so much information and data, right? This is where AI can really help surface patterns, right? Like, and then I think from PMO perspective, I think flow breaks, every decision has to go through a single gate, right? So the goal really, I think, is to push the insights, not the decisions, right? Like when the team also has the same visibility as to what the PMO says, they can sort of correct. right? And then Lauren, your job then is easy, becomes easier, right? Like more to help orchestrate the priorities, not necessarily approval, right? Like we all don't want to be in the approval flow. We want to empower our teams to be successful, right? So that's how I think when all of that is working to me, from tracking to enabling flow, I feel like then change doesn't feel disruptive, right? That's kind of how I think about it. So it isn't necessarily about moving faster, right? But more about changing the direction sooner with less friction.
Right. And I want to double click on that phrase that you use, leading indicators, because like, even though I think sometimes it can be kind of a wonky thing, like that is like really the key to being able to respond to change going forward, and to know, at least have enough information to start investigating the change. Would you agree?
That's right. That's exactly it. When I say, exactly, early signals, right? I don't necessarily mean metrics or data really, right? Things like when same people are being pulled into, like, say, multiple initiatives, right? Like when dependencies are stacking up, when work is getting reprioritized over and over again, like seeing that pattern that gives you the visibility into what could potentially break long before you actually see a milestone is going to slip, right? So, like I said, like no, not one person can necessarily detect the change, right? Like especially when there's compounded things that could potentially lead to flow, right? Like tracking, right? This is all about tracking, right? Like how do you have visibility of the tracking ahead of time, right?
Right. So we need, like, I hate to use the word dashboard, but just some sort of indicator that
a notification alerts, however you want to look at it, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And so if that's, the thinking behind how the tools are created and how the tools are set up, Patty and Lauren, like how does that those, like, going again with those leading indicators, like how does that help your teams, and how do you use that information?
Well, I'm going to talk about it from like the 50,000 foot view. If we get things that we do manually teed up for us and they're accurate, wouldn't you be able to do more work, right? That thing with AI is productivity gains. I mean, if it can eliminate manual risk searching and different bottlenecks and just give you a dashboard of where to focus, you can then do more because you're worried less about having too much and missing something, right? Having too many projects, therefore you can't actually look through all of them and make sure that they are going smoothly, seeing the issues. But if a tool can do it with AI support, that enables you to do more in the same amount of time. So that's my high level view.
I think it's such a great summarization that we could just do more work. It sounds simple, but
the same amount of time, though. I want to be very clear with everybody on the call. Same amount of time, same amount of people doing more, not working through your lunch while having a sandwich off of the Zoom, and then, after hours, after you put your kids down. Like, it's the power of AI is enabling you to do it in the same capacity you have now, because you have an assistant. You have a second Lauren that's focused on this.
Yeah.
Leading indicators are the ivory tower. That's we've been searching for leading indicators for years and years. It's so difficult to do. It's something that we all struggle to do. And the fact that these are becoming easier with the capabilities that we have now, it's such an opportunity. I think a lot of times we focus on the risks in a plan. And it's true, the cost of delay is extremely important. Putting people in the wrong places is extremely expensive. There is massive waste in any organization, any large organization especially. But it's such an opportunity with leading indicators to do better than we thought we would do in our plan, to move faster than we thought we would in our plan. And that's equally likely to happen with the right leading indicators. Yeah, I think that's an important, like the positive opportunity part of that.
Yeah, I can definitely kind of think, if you think about an example, I was just thinking as you guys were talking about it, right? Let's take an example of a portfolio. We have a big milestone where on paper, everything looks green, right? But then when you actually look at the signals themselves, like you might see like patterns of the same people that are actually over allocated, right?
And that doesn't happen.
Never.
Never happens.
And then dependencies are also, we track it, but somehow you realize the dependencies are also increasing. We are facing this, as you know, right? Like we try to resequence work, even though on paper the date may not look slipping, right? Like when you do a static status report, like Patty, we were talking about, right? None of that is going to show up in a static report. Every weekly, it's going to show green. It's going to show green. But if there is a leading indicator, you can actually see that the portfolio is really under strain, right? If you can see that early, you have options, right? You can rebalance, or you can reduce scope, or pause something else, right? Like, whereas if you wait for it to turn red, then it becomes reactionary.
I'm just curious, like Patty and Lauren, like what kind of indicators do you guys look for, since you're getting like the top level view, like you said, Lauren, like the 50,000-foot view? Like what sets off alarm bells for you?
I mean, sometimes it's as basic as dates and percentages complete against them, because one thing I say, and I might not be correct with it, but I say it a lot to my project managers, it normally comes down to the people. It's either their capacity, the capacity with the people, that either, they don't have enough capacity to do what they're doing because they're not doing 100% of their job. That's very rarely the case. It's mainly what I find, their priorities are not aligned. And so if you're looking at a portfolio and you're looking at all of your people, you quickly can realize with tools that you have, 5 cats that is supposed to deliver something on the same day with like 3 hours to do, like this just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But if you're looking at only one project statically, sure, she can accomplish that. So it's that view that can help tee up those so you can look at them and sift them out. Personally, that's what I find. I find it always comes down to capacity, and it's either not doing it or priorities. And the PMO, we have to work with leadership, build relationships to block and tackle those priorities. And we have to do it often. I think that incremental change that Patty and Rekha was talking about, like it might seem little, but if you ignore it, it's going to get big real quick. And then we're going to have even bigger issues to deal with our people underneath. So that's my take on it.
Patty, one of the things that I certainly hear, and this is honestly like sometimes I have a question is like, how does this show up in the data, is that Lauren's talking about capacity. Like we can just, let's assume that people were hired and are qualified to do the jobs that they were hired to do. But like, if we want people to have good relationships, and like sometimes that comes out in meetings, and like, do meetings surface as like a thing that take away capacity? How do we think about those in terms of capacity? Like just maintaining those 150 relationships as best you possibly can. Like how does that surface for you?
Yeah, that's top of mind for everyone, is how much capacity drain we have in just managing the work. We have talking about the work, talking about what we're going to do with the work, having meetings to give a status update on the work, planning the work. There's a lot of work about the work, and it's a huge capacity drain on people. It also, there's a big problem with underutilization of people. You hire very intelligent, brilliant people, well-rounded people to do a role, but they're capable of many things. It's important to understand the type of work that people do deliver, have delivered, have collaborated on with other people, and realize the synergies in putting certain people together, in moving people around to be able to best utilize their capacity. Many people are underutilized. And it's not only a matter of just using people's capacity because it's the right thing to do for the project. It's also the right thing to do for the people. It helps them grow. It helps them be able to push the project forward, to feed back into it, to help you understand where it could be better. As Lauren said, because they're the people that are closest to the work, who understand how the work should be done too. So that feedback loop is important. It really is a capacity challenge. That question about what leading indicators are the most important. It's the leading indicators about capacity underutilization.
Interesting. So it all comes back to that. Like Rekha, like you obviously build tools that help people manage through that. Like, do you have any other thoughts about specifically around capacity and going back to like this particular trend, like making sure that we can enable flow, people aren't overtaxed, but also that like they're not feeling underutilized as well?
We definitely have tools, right? Like, as you know, we have tools that point capacity, overutilization, underutilization. So if you're not familiar with some of the Tempo products in the SPM suite, capacity planning is a great tool. And then Kat, I think you're going to touch on adaptive planner, I'm assuming, right? Like at the end, hopefully a little bit briefly. It might be
a little tiny bit, but yeah, we wanted to focus on.
I think it'll be great, right? Like I think systems perspective, also, like I said, when people sometimes too stretch thin, to Patty, to your point, as leaders, we have to constantly look for these patterns, right? Like, I strongly believe in using people for their strengths. People have a lot of strengths, and people are always eager to do more, right? Like, so keeping them excited, right? Like, when tools only look at specific assignments, you are put people in a box, right? It doesn't always work very well, right? Like, so you don't necessarily see how are they spending time, what are they effective at, like where collaboration breaks down. I think to your point, right? Like, so I think it's a great idea, right? Like, how do we sort of look at from this perspective, look at the trend, right? So that people are not taxed, right? So not underutilized.
Simple. Okay.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts that you guys want to give before we can move on to the Q&A? And I'll just say, like, if I see some questions coming in, and
yeah,
just a moment, Louis, like you've got a lot to say. I'm really excited about all of this. If you could give me like one little question to focus on that I can take back to our panelists, because I don't think I'm going to be able to absorb everything you put in here. I'll give you a second to do that, Louis, and anybody else who wants to put some questions in, now is the time. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Like, any parting thoughts on?
I think I was more talking about back to the whole flow question, right? Like, I think when capacity is balanced but not maximized, that's when the healthy flow of information happens.
Yeah,
that's going to give us a parting thought.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Okay.
I appreciate the perspectives on this call. We talked about, people, process, technology, and they're kind of like three legs of the stool. And I'm really grateful that we have these conversations and that we kind of have a balanced approach to being able to challenge each other, to talk about how we run organizations and portfolios and projects more effectively, to how we utilize our biggest resource, our talent, more effectively. I think it's a great conversation. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, Patty, I think you just kind of wrapped it all up. And one of the things that I also wanted to call your attention to is, in addition to, the processes that our partner network works with people to set up, obviously Tempo provides the tools to do that. If you wanted to check out some more of our offerings, you can go to our website. Many of our products are packaged by collections, so project collection, program collection, and portfolio collection, and you could read a little bit more about what's appropriate for you and your team on the Tempo website. Okay, and so now we will go into Q&A, and we've got one final poll here. So based on what we discussed today, would you like to talk with a salesperson about the Tempo collections and how they can support your SPM journey? If you have interest in that, I see a couple of questions in the Q&A specifically regarding those things. And we're going to stick to like the high level people processes. And if you want to talk with somebody about exactly our what we offer and how we can help your teams, go ahead and indicate that you'd like to connect.
I'm going to respond to the tools question. I think that's an important one. I'm noticing there's a bunch of questions coming about what are the recommended tools, right? When we think about tools for program managers in 2026, Patty and Lauren, please chime in. I look at it from three lenses, right? It's really about first set of tools that we want is to really do tracking and strategy alignment, right? Like strategy connecting strategy to outcomes. And then the second one is about execution, right? Like execution visibility, right? And then, of course, I talked about the whole flow enablement. There isn't necessarily one perfect tool, but I sort of look at them as different lens, right? Like, so the first one, if you look at from the connecting SPM, which is where Tempo shines, right? The idea there is to be able to connect your goals and company initiatives and objectives to the actual outcomes, right? To the actual work that is being done to provide holistic visibility, right? So Jira and then Tempo's SPM suite all have strong capabilities here, right? So they can help you model different trade-offs, you can look at dependencies, and then you also make the alignment to the investments. Then in the project and program execution, of course, we have structure and then Jira, right? Like, so where you can, from project and portfolio managers, you get real-time visibility into execution and dependencies. And then, of course, the third one is the whole people and capacity. We talked a bit about there are a set of tools for that you want to look at, driving cross-team alignment, resource utilization, and capacity planning so that you enable this flow and avoid bottlenecks. So I think about it, at least in my mind. So,
Yeah, Lauren and Patty, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah.
I think I would just add that, our tools have kind of followed the same process that we've all followed, right? We start with the people. We start with where we're putting our people, what our people are spending their time on. We manage projects at the execution level. We manage programs. We manage portfolios. Many organizations are good at setting strategy, good at setting goals, but something is lost in the middle. And so the reason that things are still chaotic, that things still don't flow, even when we have strategy, we have goals, we have great program managers that are running these programs at the execution level, and we're updating on status. The reason that we don't have flow and that we're slow to adapt is because there's something lost in relational visibility. It's the squishy middle, right? We don't easily translate from the strategic to the tactical, understanding how that actually meets in the middle, where we can be adaptive because we understand from the top down how our strategy is directly being executed, and then we understand from the bottom up how pivots in those executions still align with our strategy.
I think you're touching, I was reviewing Lewis's comments, and I think you're touching a lot on what he was referring to, if I'm reading it right, Lewis. I think that's, it's a lot of, you have leadership expecting a view of it up here, and then you have everyone doing the work. And if you are working at a company that is working with cross-functional teams, each of those teams are going to be doing their work differently. I mean, that's just corporate PMO is that way. You have finance, you have product, you have sales ops, you have marketing ops, you have all these people. If you just think about the go-to-market process for any product, right there, you have 1 million people working different ways. How do you collect all of their work to be, from a PMO standpoint, in the structure you need it to be to actually manage it all cross-functionally, facilitate it all, capture the risk, make sure there's data, but then present it to a leadership team that needs to know and needs to be aware and needs to know real time a lot of times nowadays. I mean, the world of Amazon Prime, you don't get to wait for a whole month to do another steerco anymore. So, again, I think Kat said, I'm new at Tempo. I'm leveraging our tools, and I'm quickly realizing how that is a challenge, but also it's becoming very easy for me at that level, leveraging structure and the different Gantt. And so I think that is a well felt or a commonly felt problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there might not be one solve. My personal opinion is don't disrupt the team's work, but get what you need into your plan so that you can pull it up. Because if you don't have, I go back to the data. If you don't have the data, it didn't happen. You do not, if you need something from finance and they're not entering it, and how do you know it's being done? You don't, because you have no data. So at a point, you do have to kind of force some change at the ground level and disrupt a little bit. But again, supportive role. You don't want to disrupt too much. You need to keep the wheels going as you're changing, or keep the bus going as you're changing the wheels because it's going. So,
Great.
hopefully, Lewis, I touched on that a little bit for you.
Thank you for that. So I've got another one here. So this, and I know this is something that we deal with. So this is from John, and he asked, like, in a distributed organization, I've followed the sun workflow, which I understand, like, it's across time zones, I believe. From a PM or project perspective, how do you measure or account for time used or lost because of the distributed resources and the resulting delays team members must deal with? So I think that this is something that a lot of us deal with. It's like, I know that, like, one of my key partners is halfway across the world. And so one of us is going to lose a little bit of sleep a couple times a week. And we've just made an agreement that we can live with that. But, it can slow things down. Like, how do you guys account for that to make sure that there isn't a lot of time lost and that people know how to work together?
I have a slightly different perspective. Again, I don't know if it's right or wrong here, but if you go into the project and you know your resources and where they are with those expectations, there should be no surprise that you have people in Europe working with people in West Coast time. Like that, to me, I've always treated it as like a benefit. If you can get the flywheel going correctly, you don't have to actually work extra hours. You can use it as you gain extra hours. The US people get their stuff in to the EU people at the end of their day, you get a whole day, and then it just keeps, and it goes like that. But you have to start it and recognize it and be vocal and make sure everyone's aware of it at the beginning, because you do run into it, but it's the world we live in. I mean, it's the world of remote. Nobody's working in a company that is not cross-global anymore. I mean, it just doesn't.
Yeah. I think for me, I echo that. And then I sort of look at it in follow the sun, right? Like, it's really not about the number of hours work. It's also the time, right? Like, so at least from PM's perspective, like, it's not about tracking effort, right? We also want to track, like, how long a work is sitting idle between hands off, right? Like, or how many times it requires rework, right? But you're right in saying that they don't necessarily show up on a time tracking timesheet, but absolutely could slow down the delivery, right? Like, so that's where I do think, again, back to the AI, right? Like, can AI surface this visible and just wait times, right? So that the teams can do a smoother handoff.
Mm-hmm.
Is really, that's how I think about it. Like, really, how do we remove the unnecessary waiting in the system?
Mm-hmm.
I think if there's any gift that we've been given from a post-COVID world, it's that we all are getting better at working in a distributed fashion and communicating asynchronously. And we still kind of deal with the meeting grind, right? And that's especially difficult in a distributed team because inevitably things are going to be lost there. But I think we're getting better at communicating asynchronously and actually doing something with that communication. So yes, there's huge play for AI capabilities here to keep us on the same page, to summarize where discussions have happened, to contextualize them across cultural barriers, language barriers, things like that, in ways that keep us on the same page better than we were before. But also, our tools are capable of so much in the way of automation and dependency management. Something as simple as putting automations in place to be able to tell someone when I have finished my predecessor work so that they know that they're ready to start is so simple and doesn't require a meeting. It doesn't require synchronous time or waiting to be able to do that. And so this is where I think a combination of our tools and our processes is so helpful to be able to put those things in place to encourage flow, to make sure that the handoff of information makes sense and is contextualized in a way that person can understand when we're handing off from a technical team to a business team, when we're communicating a dependency from product to customer support. We're able to contextualize that a lot better.
I like that. I mean, if you think about that, I think what you're, Patty, echoing what you're saying, when the systems or AI or tools can surface this, right, then that visibility really takes away this uncertainty into a choice, right? Like that way, without...
Yeah, I was going there too. I think that automation and AI get used interchangeably, right?
Yeah.
Like set of workflows and AI sometimes get used interchangeably, but I think, they should be complementary and they should be working together with people. I think there's lots of opportunity for AI as well as those workflows. I mean, to me, I feel like automation is table stakes now. Like it should just be there. It's not a shiny new feature anymore, right? Like that should just be something that we are all as project and program managers, portfolio managers setting up. I mean, that automatically eliminates. I think the AI is now the new thing that we should be incorporating. I know there was a question in there, but like something as simple as like your meeting notes. I mean, if you're not using AI to record your meetings and transcribe and to send your actions, you are wasting your time. Like the second that was available and the second I started trusting it, I hardly even review the notes because they're so good anymore. Train it. I mean, there's just, so that now to me is the table stakes. Like, AI reporting, note taking, not that fancy anymore. Everyone should have it. You're inefficient if you don't. So I think, and then you add on the tools that have AI that are specific for those tools, and it's a game changer.
Imagine those tools take those meetings and the decisions that are being made and automatically like create a task. And
I mean, tell me more. Like,
seems like a product idea.
Seems like a product idea. What a concept. Yeah.
So like to just like put a fine point on it. So to wrap up John's question, and point taken when I say that I've lost sleep and maybe my partner in Eastern Europe has lost sleep, like we also just kind of maybe like each other and kind of want to talk for like a half hour. But point taken about like, use the tools so that you can work asynchronously. And, just like in prepping for this webinar, I left you all like a video message about like, here's the the speaker notes and here's how we're going to do this. And so, cause we're all in different time zones or busy. And point taken about using the tools that are available to us. But I know a couple of people have asked, and this is a really common question, just like, maybe we can wrap up with like your top 3 AI tools, and it doesn't have to be the super sexy ones, just like, which ones are you using that you get the most value out of in your day? I'll go first. Well, I'll say like, meeting notes, like everyone knows that like Katherine really insists on having the note taker in the meeting, and Slack, like all the AI features in Slack, all the search, and Rovo. I'm really loving Rovo. Okay, you go first or second.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of stole mine too, right? Like, again, I think if you're not using AI note taking, and I think that the thing is, in the world of AI, people are still exploring. Some companies are still exploring. I'm a firm believer of native tools and native functionality. Like, we don't need to bring in other third party. If you're a Google shop, use Gemini. If you are a Microsoft shop, but Copilot's not great, but you can still use it, right? Like, 'cause it's like embedded in your system. So I think there's so many ways you can just use it if it's on. So I'm a firm believer of like using the tools that are making the AI work with them. So I don't even want to like list them out because the enterprise applications, I use a million tools. But as long as the AI is native in there, it's built and designed to support the business process in which you use the tool. So I think people have this misconception of going out and getting additional AI and putting it on top of your tools. My experience, it's overbearing. It's giving people more work. Another thing to learn.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
How about you, Patty?
I am, of course, a big fan of AI chat. We use Google tools here at Tempo, and I think Gemini. I am continually amazed by Gemini and how it has evolved over the past year. It's just constantly blowing me away. Also, I do use Rovo in all kinds of ways, continually through my work, both with agents, with chat, with Confluence, with Jira, embedded in our tools. We use Rovo constantly. I'm a big Cursor fan too. And I'll throw in a fourth. I really love Notebook LM. I use that constantly for being able to compartmentalize my thoughts, for creating, I think it's really great for disseminating information to teams. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of written information, you're dealing with a whole bunch of phone calls and video chats and things like that. And you can create a briefing, create a podcast for people, try to meet people where they're at, and communicate in a way that resonates with them. And it's the same data. So I love it for that.
Nice. How about you, Rekha?
Yeah, from product perspective, I use a lot in my team and encourage my team to use a lot, right? If you look at product, when I'm delivering product, right, the first thing first, right, like spec writing, right? Like AI is a huge time saver. Just within Jira, using the help me write a ticket, that is something my team uses extensively. I personally use AI, especially ChatGPT or like Gemini. Actually, I am being impressed with Gemini lately, and then we've been using it even not just for work, but also for personal when I travel. Give me the itinerary, help me book best flight deals, right? Like, so from work perspective, yeah, I think AI for spec writing, doc writing, narratives, if you build your persona into these tools and right, like, and feed that into your corporate environments, right, it actually can really learn and bring in competitive intelligence and help you really draft these high level specs, right, and narratives and strategy documents. For me, because that's a huge time saver, right? Like I speak the tools a lot of times, my thoughts, and it can help me create like a super professional looking document, right? That I think is powerful for me personally. Design perspective, I'm a visual person, so I do a lot of prototyping using Lovable, V0, right? Like feed that spec into these tools, and it oftentimes helps me create awesome design. In fact, I'm working on one, right? Like specifically about capacity planning, AI driven, right? Like, so things like that, I love it. It's super amazing to be able to take an idea and within minutes, I'm actually able to create a tangible prototype that I could actually show to the team and get their thoughts, right? I think that is something I personally use. And of course, meeting notes. With a person who has ADHD, I like to have like notes oftentimes. Like I do go back and look at the notes and synthesize. It helps me. I'm being vulnerable as a leader here.
Wait, I think you are not alone in that.
I just want to add, just for anyone who's like trying to explore AI and trying to learn about it or is using it, I want to take it to the next level to really look at the agentic side of AI, the process, the agents on agents, and how they can, look at what repetitive tasks you do weekly, daily, however often, your pain points. I guarantee there's an AI out there to do some of that for you. And that's like the beauty of that's like the next level. A lot of the ones we just mentioned, again, I say they're still kind of shiny, but they're starting to get rusty, right? Like that, we should all be using those. The next level is like, it should be doing our workflows for us proactively. And that's kind of the evolution that we should all be looking into. So just sort of have that plug our AI.
Yeah.
Patty has built us a lot of AI agents, comparative tools on top of a lot of our Confluence data and Jira data. So I love using them.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank all of you, our panelists, for this far-ranging conversation today, and thank all of you that attended for your time. We know that you were all really busy and you were all super engaged, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions. We will take a look at some of those and put you in touch with the right people. And again, if you want to talk to somebody about Tempo tools, either check the website, especially the portfolio collection page, or reach out to a salesperson. And with that, we will wrap up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.